Many people don't know this, but Trijicon actually hides little biblical Easter eggs, which I guess is kind of a pun, but also not anyways, on a lot of their products. And with the new RMRcc from Trijicon, my copy has in the tiniest lettering MT13:32. That is Matthew chapter 13, verse 32, which reads, "Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches." Very clever. In a way, it's Trijicon saying there's more than just what meets the eye with the Trijicon RMRcc. It's a little bit of a tactical grower, not a tactical shower. And that's what we're going to talk about today on my full review of the RMRcc. Trijicon brought the first pistol red dot optic to the market, arguably, with the Trijicon RMR in 2009, a little more than 10 years ago. So this, the RMRcc, is a long-awaited design made specifically for ultra-compact guns like single stacks, the Glock 43, 43X, and 48, the SIG P365 and 365 XL ultra-compact handguns, the Hellcat for the people that own it, all three of you, and so on. It's basically a shrunken down micro red dot sight for your pistol. And a lot of people have been waiting for Trijicon to make a micro red dot sight for pistols. Trijicon wasn't the first with the RMRcc to the ultra compact market, again, like the 365 Glock 43 and so on. So people were waiting to see what Trijicon did. They released the RMRcc, and with the initial specs, a lot of people were really excited, but there were a lot of people who were really critical. Let's talk about the specs, and then we'll drop straight into the review. The RMRcc is incredibly small and light, and it needs to be to fit those slimline pistols like the Glock 43 series, the Shield, 365, so on. It's basically a 0.9 inch square. It's 0.9 inches tall, 0.9 inches wide, and it weighs just 1 ounce with the battery. But don't let the dimensions fool you. The RMRcc is also tough as nails, and it features a 4-year constant on battery life at setting of 4 out of 8, using a common CR2032 calculator-like battery. It's also designed to be waterproof to 20 meters, and it's built to mil standard 810 spec. More on that in a moment. The RMRcc has 8 brightness settings, including 1 super bright mode and 2 night vision modes. It also has an option for an auto brightness mode, which is great for everyday carry. A sensor on the RMRcc detects the level of ambient light and sets the dot brightness accordingly, so the dot doesn't get washed out by ambient light or become so bright that it washes you out in dim light. It also features a lock-in mode that secures the user-chosen brightness setting indefinitely. So if you think you're smarter than your RMRcc, you can go ahead and make that election. There's no need for tools to adjust windage and elevation, and each is set 3 MOA per tick. Most impressively, the RMRcc housing is built straight up like a tank out of a one-piece chunk of 7075 T6 forged aluminum, which is the same material AR-15 receivers are made with. It features little ears on the top of the small glass lens that protect it from straight-on drops and hard impacts. I think they look more like horns, but refer back to the Bible verse. It comes in 3.25 and 6.5 MOA LED reticle configurations. We're going to do things backwards in this video, and we're going to start with the bad news first. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there are a lot of people who saw the initial specs and the initial press hype about the RMRcc and were pissed off. One of them, a very close friend of mine, Jack Daniel, one of the instructors out at Thunder Ranch, his main beef with the RMR, or should I say beefs, is that first of all, it uses a proprietary mounting system, which is going to make probably half of you just shut this video off right now. And second, you have to completely remove the optic to change the battery. And there are a number of other complaints about the RMRcc. We're just going to address each of them in turn before I tell you how I personally feel about this new optic. Let's start with some low-hanging fruit from the Trijicon RMRcc Bible tree, and that is an MSRP of $700. I know you guys love bitching about expensive stuff on my program, And that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and give you a second. Go ahead and make your comment, complain about why this thing costs $699 if you're so inclined. I'll wait. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about perhaps the biggest deal, and that is that the Trijicon uses a proprietary footprint. The thing about these micro RMRs, micro red dot sights, you have to put them on top of your gun and they've got to stay there. Duct tape doesn't work. That means that you need screw holes basically in the top of your slide, and that can be a little bit complicated, especially when you already have a semi-standard with the Shield RMRcc footprint that I believe SIG uses that, Shield of course uses that, and I think Holosun is even using that. And Trijicon is going a totally different route, which makes it a major pain in the ass. At the time of filming, I'm not aware of any manufacturer that makes a slide from the factory where you can just drop a Trijicon RMRcc on there. So how are you going to get an RMRcc on your pistol? You're going to have to use mounting plates. And to me, mounting plates are like condoms. No one wants to use them. They're not fun. They cost money and they can break. In fact, I've got a Trijicon plate right here. You're going to have to screw this plate into your pistol and then your optic onto this plate. It's an additional point of failure. It also just kind of looks funky, and it can sometimes, depending on the gun and the mounting system, raise the profile of your optic, which is going to then occlude your iron sights. So I really hate mounts. What's your next option? You're going to have to get your slide cut. That's going to cost around $150. More money on an already $700 optic, right? Now, fortunately, Trijicon actually makes a ton of mounting options for the RMRcc already for all the big names: Glock, SIG, Smith & Wesson, Springfield, even Kimber, and I think Walther. But again, I don't really like plates. Maybe a more attractive option is to spend $150 and just get your slide milled. Or you can do what I did. I got in touch with the guys at Gray Ghost Precision. They didn't pay me for this plug. I just kind of know the guys from seeing them at shows and events for years now. A good bunch of dudes, and they set me up with a custom milled slide, a GGP slide that I've got on my 43X, and the RMRcc just drops into place perfectly on it because I had it custom cut. But again, you're talking about more money, and at this point, especially if you're buying a slide, you're easily approaching $1,000. But Trijicon didn't do this just to be a bunch of hipster buttholes like a bunch of people think they did. How would they make money off this? I don't know. Like, I don't think it's a brilliant commercial idea. Trijicon obviously would want to cater to whatever the closest thing to a universal footprint is. It just makes more sense for them. So it isn't like they did this to be cool or like in some money-making conspiracy. They did it because they didn't want to compromise on the design. And you know what? I respect that. It isn't like they did it just to be a bunch of jerks like a lot of people out there seem to believe. I mean, a lot of you just got really upset about this proprietary mounting footprint when I think it actually runs contrary to Trijicon's best interest. I think that if they could, they would. They just didn't want to compromise, and I get it. Now, a lot of people, like my good buddy Jack, complain about the battery changing. You have to remove the entire optic to put a battery in, and you have at least a couple other optics right now where you don't have to remove the optic from the slide. And people bitch about that because, you know, you can strip the screws, you might knock it out of zero, you're gonna have to probably re-Loctite it on there, maybe get new screws. It's a pain in the ass, right? But the battery life on this thing is 4 years constantly on. That means I only have to change it roughly every time I remember my anniversary with Lindsay. I'm saying every other year at most. It's not really that big of a deal. Another thing people have complained about is this 3 MOA tick adjustment. First of all, it's ticks, not clicks. Clicks are tactile, right? You know, click, 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 click every time you turn it. The Trijicon RMRcc doesn't have that. Moreover, it's got these ticks, like these little measuring ticks. Whenever you turn to one of those, it adjusts 3 MOA. That's 3 inches at 100 yards. A lot of people are bitching about that. I didn't realize there were so many micro handgun snipers out there who needed finer adjustments than 3 inches at 100 yards. Like, I mean, at 10 yards, that's 0.3 inches, and anything beyond 10 yards is probably murder. So I don't have an issue with it. I mean, sight the frickin' thing in for 10 yards and you're good to go. The end. Another issue, the RMRcc does not have a built-in rear sight. Every other micro compact red dot sight that I'm thinking of, SIG, Shield, Holosun, they all have little backup iron sights, like a rear sight built into the chassis. They're not that great, but hey, at least they're there and you can still use your front sight. Not the case with the RMRcc. If this thing goes down, you're basically playing a game of tactical battleship. That's because with the factory height sights on most guns, you're not going to be able to see your front and rear sights. Now you can do what I did, which is get suppressor height sights for whatever gun you're using. This is a Glock 43X, and I've got prototype 43X night sights that are suppressor height, so I can use them with my optic, but I'm not even sure you can buy anything like this yet for the Glock 43X, even though there might be other options out there. So that's another obstacle and more money you're gonna have to spend. These are probably going to be 150 bucks whenever they come out. So that's a lot of issues we've discussed already, and there's one other significant one, and that is what's called dot panic. That's whenever you raise your gun up, you're looking down the sight, and you can't find your dot. Now you have optics like, say, the Trijicon SRO, which has a bigger window here, and it's a lot easier to find that dot. You might raise your optic up, say with the SRO, and you're not going to be maybe right on target whenever you present, but you're gonna at least be able to see the dot and quickly navigate that dot to where it needs to be. With the RMRcc, this window is a lot smaller. Now I will say this, I haven't been doing dots for a while. I was one of the late adopters of the red dot sight, and I'm not sure that I'm fully on board yet. I'm gonna do a separate video about that in the future. But what I will say is with enough practice, you actually get used to this thing pretty quickly. Yes, certainly, dot panic is real, and even when I'm filming the video, when I'm doing the review at St. Bernard Indoor Shooting Center, my favorite range here in New Orleans, I actually lost it whenever I was firing. I was slower because I lost it. It's like this window is so small. It is a compromise. I mean, that's ultimately what you're getting is a compromise. The window is so small that it is possible to lose the dot, but I've also been carrying this for like 6 weeks now, at most. I'm still getting used to it. I'm still practicing with it, and I am pretty impressed with how I've been performing compared to iron sights. But I'm gonna wave that concern away a little bit, and I'll tell you that it's not unique to the RMRcc. If you have any small optic, you're gonna have the same problem. Moreover, it really doesn't take a whole lot of practice to kind of get used to it, especially if you've got your co-witness sights. All you gotta do is just look for your sights, just like you would if you had irons. You're gonna find your dot right there. So it sounds like a big issue, but it really sounds like a bigger issue than it is, if that makes sense. So we've got all these other options out there other than the RMRcc, and they're all pretty much less expensive than the RMRcc. So why would anyone then go with the RMRcc? Well, probably the same reason that I'm going with the RMRcc. I just trust it, dudes. That's the way I feel about it, and I'm willing to spend money on it. I know that the RMR is probably one of the most durable optics that's ever been introduced. The battery life is great. I love the adaptive brightness setting, or that is the lockout setting. It's small, it's light, it's made in the USA. It's made out of one monolithic piece of aluminum. This is a lightweight, durable, and well put together optic.
Ryan, you have carried an RMR for a couple years now, right?
Yep.
Like a regular, which RMR?
Just the RMR 06 Type 2 on a Gen 3 Glock 19.
Okay, and what do you think of that?
Well, I love the RMR. This one, you know, at first, looking through it, I thought this might be a little too small of a window. And you do kind of lose the dot a little easier, but looking down, it's definitely easy to pick up. Dot's clear, window's clear. I like it.
I mean, if you had a 43X or 48,
this is exactly what I have on it.
That's the one you would get.
Exactly.
So I guess what it all boils down to is trust. I don't think that anyone out there, even if you guys are like, screw the RMRcc, I'm not doing that. I don't think anyone out there is gonna say, hey, look, the RMRcc or Trijicon, like, they make a bad optic, or they make a not rugged optic. Nobody's going to say that, and that's the thing is I just trust it. It's the same reason why I like Glock. I just trust them. There's also a piss load of testing that goes into these designs and Trijicon has you can go to trijicon.com/science and they've got a brief overview of all the testing that they do to their optics. Trijicon actually performs something that they call the Alaska to Africa. And no, that's not a description of my porn taste. It's a test where they bring this optic from -20 degrees to 140 degrees to see if it screws with it at all. They also test each optic to 5,000 rounds to make sure that there's no zero shift. Funny story about that. Adam Skaponiak, who's one of our editors with TFB, he got to go to the Trijicon RMRcc release event, and they had a little thing where they gave these guys guns with RMRccs on them, and they said, hey, look, what we want you to do is take this RMRcc, slam it as hard as you can against this wood 4x4 in front of you, and then fire the gun. We want you to do that as many times as you want over the next 15 minutes or so. Slam the piss out of the thing, fire it. Tell us if you can break it or even get it to go off zero. And turns out nobody there at the event could do that. And Adam, I mean, that guy's like a monster Norseman. And he was slamming this thing. He has these pictures here that I'll post up where it was like you could see the indention of them slamming this optic into these wood beams, and that's pretty damn impressive. And like I said, it's also built out to mil standard 810. You can go to Wikipedia or something like that and find out what mil standard 810 is. Mil standard 810 or any of the mil standard anythings, they're a little bit tricky because there's not like a commercial entity or watchdog that verifies that certain products meet a certain standard. But Trijicon has enough government contracts that if they say mil standard 810, they probably mean it. This is actually kind of a slow to publish review for TFBTV. I got this optic about 2 months ago. I like to get things to you guys faster than that, but I wanted to make sure that this was done right. I don't have a whole heck of a lot of experience with micro red dot sights on pistols, so every time I went to the range, I brought the RMRcc. I shot a pistol course with this Glock 43 and the RMRcc. So far, I've been really impressed with it. So as we sit here today, am I telling you to buy the Trijicon RMRcc? Absolutely not. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm telling you why I would. I trust Trijicon. This thing's built like a brick shit house. I love the durability. I love the specs. I love the battery life. And the size is just perfect, especially for the Glock 43X, which is, for the most part, my primary carry. So I think Trijicon did a great job with this new optic. I understand a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me, and that is fine. Leave it in the comments, keep it civil, unless you're talking about my shorts, which I know you're going to. Thank you for watching, and thank you for subscribing. By the way, please do us a favor. We don't take money from Trijicon or other manufacturers that we feature on this program because you guys support us on Patreon and Subscribestar. We also give away cool stuff on those pages. So please, and you can at least get a TFB patch. Thank you to our sponsors, Blue Alpha, Ventura Munitions, and Federal Ammo. Guys, stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you more TFB TV. Take care.